Hello and welcome to Man's Model Moments, everybody. See a fair few regulars in the chat, so just having a quick rundown. Paul Christopher, Go For It Painting, Richard Hughes, David Markey, David Barber, Dave from World War II Scale Models. I hope you got back to Oxford okay, Dave. Well, I trust you did, seeing as you're in the chat. Colin Berry, Phil, Colin Berry, Mario, hello. Good evening, everybody. And I should also say a welcome to Jamie from Scale Modeling Cafe. Welcome.
Hello.
Man's Model Moments Midweek Model Meet.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
6M for short.
Yeah.
So, Jamie, some of the people in the chat may not be familiar with your channel and what you do. So, give us a quick modeling bio and a bit of a rundown of your channel.
Yeah, sure. So I've been, obviously modeling for a very long time. Cut a very long story short, got back to the hobby in my mid-20s, not long after I joined the Navy, and I've never looked back since, really. When Model Airplane International started, I wrote in and said, I quite fancy getting into writing magazine articles, and they said, yeah, show me some pictures of your models, and I did, and they went, we'd love to have you on board. And that's when I started with the magazines, and I've been doing that for quite a few years. And I'd always had in the back of my mind, I'd quite fancy starting up a YouTube channel and sort of taking it that from print into videos, and put it off and put it off and put it off and put it off, and then eventually I went, sorry, I'm gonna do it. So I did. So it's been going for 2 and a bit years now. I looked around. I was an avid consumer, still am an avid consumer of YouTube. Pulled in loads of different ideas, and the way I decided to structure the videos were the projects a bit like Martin Kovac, who is an absolute genius when it comes to this sort of thing. So why not try and copy the good guys? And the normally on a project, the part one is just a chapter camera, an introduction, introduce people to the model, all the aftermarket. I use a lot of aftermarket. And what I've got, the sort of that, I think we could all close our eyes and imagine what the model's going to look like at the end of the project. So I try to get that across in part one. Part two is normally the cockpit, 3 construction, and then 4 painting and weathering. I have once taken all those parts of a model, and I thought, right, I'm going to try and condense it into a 30-minute video, and I found it really difficult.
Yeah.
I got it down to about 30, I think 35, 38, and then another couple of minutes of static photos with a bit of music at the end. So I find that really difficult because there's so much I want to put into it.
Yeah.
That I just find it really difficult to get what I want across in one 30-minute video, especially something with that particular example was the Zucchimura Phantom, which is a very involved model with a complicated paint job.
Zucchimura kits aren't kind of like thrown together in an afternoon kind of thing, are they?
No, exactly. So, but I'm about to. It's all edited. I just need to do the voiceover, which is what I tend to do that in post production. Is narrate it at the end, knit it all together, and then I'll just blah on over the top. It's the ammo of MiG 17 in 48 scale, which I believe is molded by Kinetic, and they sent me some prototypes of their atom paints, which are now obviously fully out. It's just there's been a bit of a lag getting the videos out, but I managed to get that into a 2-parter. Part 1 is cockpit and construction, and part 2 is just the painting using the new atom paints. And I think that's worked well, actually, trying to get that down into 2. But like I say, I was supposed to do that today, the narration, but all of a sudden it's 10 o'clock here and the day's gone. So
I always find the maybe this is a subject for future week's discussion,
yeah,
but I always find the final parts of editing a video, which for me is always the voiceover, because if I just recorded as I tried to at one point, talking whilst I'm doing the stuff, it's interrupted by me shouting at the dog or the dog barking. Well, the dog barking, me shouting at the dog to be quiet. Or somebody comes to the door, or there's 100 different things
yeah,
that can happen, and then I forget where I'm at, or you have to redo a bit and stuff. So much easier to do it post.
absolutely.
I have to kind of make mental notes for myself, or like actually say on my original audio, what I'm trying to point out, because otherwise I'll forget. But yeah, YouTube video making is an interesting profession, if you can call it that, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I knew it was going to be a lot of work, a lot of hours in the editing. I probably underestimated it by 1,000%.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's very easy. And I find in pretty much any model, but certainly something like I've just recently uploaded the Tamiya F14, which actually I built about, over 6 months ago now. that last 10% of the model seems to take 50% of the time.
Yeah.
The gear,
I
the
have
ordnance, the pitos, seat, just
Yeah.
all those bits just takes ages.
this
So
blemming was
yeah,
pretty much in this form, which is 95% done. I've got to put like things like the turret on and stuff. But it's been like that for probably 6 months. And it just needs those last little bits doing. I gave it its matte coat today so that I can take all of the mask, which is one of my favorite bits of a model, is once you got the finish on, taking the masking off. It's
yeah.
just like, and you can finally see it, provided it's all worked correctly, of course.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Because that's the other thing. I'm not too sure. I used Tamiya matte coat on this, and I'm not 100% happy with the finish on it. So
I'm a
but
complete convert to VMS for
yeah. I
satin
mean,
and
I
matte.
don't usually
Beautiful stuff.
use Tamiya, but I did on the Gannet, and it was okay after I really screwed it up. But I rescued that. But this time, I'm not 100% convinced. I don't think I'll be using it again.
No.
I usually use De La Rowney matte varnish, but I've had the bottle I've been using for about 25 years. And I can't get the top off anymore because the varnish has just completely stuck it. So I think I probably got my money's worth. So
well, I was going to say value for money, tick. Yeah.
Yeah, ease of
well,
use.
I've been on the exactly. Well, I've been on the search for the holy grail for a matte/satin varnish for forever. All my painting, notwithstanding, I've just done the atom paints, but I'm pretty much 100% lacquer or geocyprios, Tamiya, you know what I mean. And I find that a matte or satin varnish using those varnishes it's just too thin, and it always shows up the edge of the height of the decal, even on the thinnest decals. And you just don't get that, I find, with the acrylic varnishes. But to find an acrylic varnish that gives me the right sheen without getting the white blooming, smooth, hiding the carrier film, and robust, I just couldn't find it. And then Martin Kovac rocks up with VMS, and I thought, right, I'll try that one then. And it was like, game changer. This is the one.
I'll have to try that and then get them in for the shop.
Oh yeah, mate, just that VMS. The mattes for me is a bit too matte, for probably better suited for armor maybe. But the satin for aeroplanes, it's that kind of matte, but with a smooth. But it's smooth.
Yeah.
So you get that sort of slight aeroplane sheen. to it,
Yeah.
and carrier film just disappears. It
Yeah, 'cause
unifies the finish.
the
No
decals on this,
blooming or whiting at all.
yeah, the decals on this were fairly, because I was a bit worried about this when I looked at it, because I thought those look very prominent, partially because they were very shiny. But they have the edge of the carrier film has nicely disappeared under the Tamiya, but it's just the rest of the
Oh,
finish
brilliant.
is not what I would hope
Yeah.
for. It's a bit patchy. Not patchy is the wrong word because it implies a big differential, but it's not quite there.
Noticeable.
Yeah. Well, it's noticeable to me,
Yeah.
Whether it's anybody else, I'm not sure, but maybe for the purposes of YouTube, it'll be okay. It depends how I light
Yeah.
it.
Well, we
But,
are our worst critics, aren't we?
yes, absolutely. What I've also found works quite well, I've used on a couple of things. I used it on the Tamiya, not the Tamiya, the Airfix 124 Spitfire, is Army Painter Anti-Shine from a rattle
I've not
can.
heard of that. Not heard of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it's obviously Army Painter, so it's mainly for war games, for people doing Warhammer and stuff. But it actually works pretty well because it does knock it down. Because the reason I hadn't used the Kryler, the De La Rowney Kryler matte varnish, one is it's a white spirit soluble thing, so it's a very good hard finish. But that's a separate set of, because I'm already using lacquers as my bait. I use Outlaw mainly, some SMS, and then Tamiya if I don't have what I want. I find spray very, very well. But the Outlaw, lacquer paints they're just harder. They've got so many advantages apart from the smell. But acrylics, fine. Been using those. And I used to use enamels years ago, which is where that came from. But now it's a pain because I've either got to use a different airbrush completely or go through the whole, change through ethanol and stuff. So I use the Army Painter Anti-Shine because I've got it, had it around for, I think, D&D figures I was using it for. And just use that. And the Kryler is as matte as you can get, like you say, almost too matte. It's great for armor, but for some aircraft, you just think, would it really have been that matte? You look at an RAF, Spitfire or whatever, it does have a sheen on it because they wanted them to fly, not hide in bushes. And the anti-shine is almost exactly that. It calls itself anti-shine, like matte varnish, but it's matte, but with that slight sheen, not semi-gloss, just that little bit, which you think that's actually perfect for aircraft.
Perfect for aeroplanes.
Yeah, but of course,
and especially something bigger like a 24th scale Spitfire, which you're going to need definitely need that sheen on it.
Well, and I didn't want to have to airbrush that that much varnish in an airbrush on that bigger model. I thought I'm going to spill it at some point, over the surface, really ruin it. But yeah, that actually works quite well. I've actually sold it in the shop. It sells really well. I'm out at the moment. I need to get more stock in, so I might, sort of just take one for 10 for the shop, one for me, kind of thing. But it's one of the advantages of having a model shop.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
But just looking at the chat, there's a fair few more have joined. Who do we have? Let's see. John Alec, I saw, popped in, who will be joining us a little bit later. So that'll be good. Taggers, Davros. Apologies if I miss anybody, by the way. Julian. In a Zoom meeting at the moment. I have done that, actually been on the Zoom meeting and been watching something as well. We won't say anything if you don't. Who else do we have who's popped in? Just going very quickly. Kercheval, George, the Edmund 30. That's a good YouTube title, isn't it? But welcome everybody. And as I said, we have Jamie from Scale Model Cafe. And one of the things that we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about it last week, but we postponed it for Jamie because he couldn't make last week, is
unfortunately,
discussion on accuracy or realism. Let's call it realism in modeling versus art. And I think we've all seen it. And it was kind of, I owe the kind of idea to Jamie, really, because I was watching I think it was through a tenuous thread of, I think I got not a copyright notification, but you know, when you get mentions on the channel, YouTube tells you.
Yeah.
I think it came through from you talking about the ICM interview I did with Valeria.
Yeah.
And I saw that, and then I was just poking around your channel. I've seen it before, but as others will know, I generally don't watch other channels because I don't want to feel like I'm stealing ideas, for one thing. And, you know, it's time as well. But I was looking through some stuff, saw some of your things, and one of the videos which I commented on, and I know you replied to it, was about how you don't like pre-shading. And
Yeah.
just thinking about it, and when you mentioned about you want to make your models, you know, you aim for realism, I thought actually that's a really good topic because, and I think we've talked about it on Airfix and Chill in passing before. And the topic of realism is one that often comes up in a lot of circles in different ways. So I thought it'd be quite a good thing to talk about because I think it was Night Shift that a fair bit ago sort of went away from, and I think he said this in his videos, moved away from realism into kind of more what he wants to do sort of artistically expressively, if you like. So I thought it's a really interesting sort of thing because there's a whole different set of things about it, right? It's like, what is realism in modeling? How do you achieve it? And, you know, how much of yourself do you put into a model before it starts to deviate from it, I guess. So tell me a little bit about what do you think realism is in a model, Jamie, and how do you aim for that? What's your approach?
Yeah. So what I tend to do is I do a fair amount of research into the actual subject, not necessarily the shapes of things, but how do they look and how do they weather. And I'll tend to, rather than try and model a specific aeroplane in a specific photo, is I'll have a look at that aeroplane type in that theatre at about that stage of the war or operation, because I do jets as well. And what I tend to do is rather than model that specific aeroplane, is I'll do one from the unit that isn't in that photograph. So maybe it's just out of shot and it's just sat there. And what you tend to find is a new aeroplane will get delivered in to the squadron and it will look very new and there'll be tatty ones around it, and then it'll get steadily worse and worse and worse. And if it survives long enough, it becomes minging at the end of it, or until it goes away for overhaul. So what I want to do is I look at photographs of that aeroplane in that theatre at various, or aeroplanes at various stages, and then I'll have something in my mind of what I want to achieve. So it's not a particular aeroplane on a particular day, and doing that gives you a little bit more freedom. So you cannot be criticized of saying, well, that aeroplane didn't look like that. You said, well, it might have looked like that a month after that photo was taken.
Unless you
here's an
ever meet
aeroplane,
the pilot or ground crew for that particular aircraft, in which case you're screwed anyway. So
exactly. And memory as it is, I'm fortunate enough that I work in military aviation and I have done for 30 odd years. And aeroplanes that I've flown, I couldn't tell you what color they were painted in. And, I flew Tornado and I know there's a big black stripe from the thrust reverse going up the tail, but I couldn't tell you what angle, how wide it is. But if you look at pictures of Tornadoes, you'll see clean ones and absolutely minging ones, and everything in between. Exactly. So, and I flew in peacetime and I did a bit. I mean, I'm out in the Middle East as we speak, and I did some flying out here. And there's a lot of misconceptions about, especially, I mean, I was a naval aviator, and, the amount of people who said naval aeroplanes didn't weather. because of corrosion. And I go, that's nonsense, to use a polite word. And then you can pull out photos, reams of photos of minging naval aeroplanes, because in the Second World War they were disposable, and they weren't going to last long enough to suffer corrosion. Was the thinking. So obviously modern aeroplanes are a little bit different, but even our aeroplanes, I flew Lynx, and you get back from a 7-month deployment, and that helicopter, every time it flew, got sprayed with PX24 and wiped down by the ground crew, and it was minging after a deployment, and it'd been so well looked after. On one deployment, we took Evelyn, she was called. We took Evelyn apart, and she was washed and scrubbed and put back together again. And 2 weeks later, she looked minging. So I'm rambling now, but the vision I have in my head is based on reality. The problem we have in modeling is you could get a full-size aeroplane, and with a magic shrinking ray, shrink it down to 48 scale, stick it on a competition table, and it won't win because it'll look bland.
Yeah.
So what we have to do is come up with all these different techniques to fool the brain into thinking this is a miniature version of a full-size object.
I think that's one of the biggest
various ways of doing that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest bugbears that I have, is when people talk about realism and things, is that, as you said, we are representing, as you say, it's an illusion, it's smoke and mirrors. We're trying to fool you because, as I've said many times, like you've said, your miniature shrinking ray, well, suddenly light is, you've got 48 times less light per surface area on that thing reflecting back, so it won't look the same. Even as you said, you've got exactly the right thing, exactly the right amount of weathering and everything, but because it's shrunk down, light doesn't interact with it in the same way. So
absolutely,
you have to recreate some of that. That's why do we do panel lining? Well, it's to simulate or to fool the eye into thinking there is some shadow there where it isn't, or some dirt has been, all of these things. So it always amuses me when people say, oh, the panel lines were never that deep and stuff. It's like, well, no, but that's not the point. If you did it as deep as they were, divided by 72, the thing would be smooth. very smooth.
Exactly. And that panel line and riveting, I rivet all my models if they don't come riveted, because it just creates noise on the surface.
Visual interest.
Exactly. And people say you can't see rivets on on the real thing. So okay, well, if you stand 48 feet away from the real thing, you probably won't see the rivets. But that's all assuming that you're going to look at your model from exactly 12 inches away. And we don't do that. No. You go to, you look at your friend's model, or you go to a model show, or, your model, and you're right in there like this, looking at the detail. So, and well, for every person is that
you do, if you see enough interest to go closer, because the whole thing from 3 feet away, most models look pretty okay. Even I would argue, even fairly terrible ones I've made myself to demonstrate points. I think if you have them 3 or 4 feet away, they look okay. It's like, oh look, there's a Focke-Wulf 187 Falk there, and then you go in for that closer look, and it's just like, ooh. I would, looking at the one that I did. So if you've got that interest, you need something. You need the hook. In sales and commercial, it's always the marketing. What's going to hook you in for that closer look? Because at a model show, especially, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of models to look at. It's one of the things not problems I have with Scale Model World at Telford, or even a small model show, but it's a saturation. Your mind can only take in so much of any one thing.
Exactly. And then you'll watch a YouTube video of the show you've just been to, and you'll see all these models that you never saw,
You never saw. Yeah,
and they're brilliant. And you go, oh, I wish I'd seen that one. And it's really annoying.
it is.
But I find the best models though are the ones that there's something about them, and you have a look, and then the more you look at it, the more you see.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like dioramas are a classic.
I was
for
just
that.
about to say, I have a friend,
Yeah.
I don't know if you know of him, called Phil Stachinkas, who he was a sculptor at Forge World for a bit. He used to be on the modeling circuit quite a bit.
He was the hairspray guy, wasn't he? Didn't he invent a hairspray? Well, not invent a hairspray, but you know what I mean. The technique for hairspray. I've got a feeling he's the guy who first used hairspray for chipping.
It wouldn't surprise me.
And he won a gold at Euromilitaire, and it was a Panzer IV.
Yeah, probably
in dark yellow, but winter whitewash chipped on it with the crew riding on it, and
yeah,
and amazing. And I might be wrong, but I'm sure he's the guy who first used hairspray.
He's written books and stuff. He used to do painting for figures, the 1/16 and 1/9 scale figures, like back in the 90s, before they, when they actually sent a sculpt out. Somebody, professional painter as he was at the time, painted it, sent it back. They took photos on film cameras, printed them, and used those on the boxes.
Wow.
So I mean, incredibly talented guy. As a lot of very talented people are, very humble, very nice guy to talk to. I met him physically for the first time in a couple of decades. We both had young children about the same time when I was up in Cheshire. And now they're all grown up, so we kind of talked a bit about that, and I was talking to a couple of my friends with him, and they were just like, he had his dioramas there because he was always a diorama guy, and always armor. He did some planes, but they didn't interest him. And the guys were saying, "Oh, where do you get your figures from?" It's like, well, it's like I take what bits I want from, Tamiya or Art or whatever, but sculpt most of them my own because I don't usually find what I'm looking for, and it's just like, geez, that's where we got onto now, is it? Like,
unbelievable, isn't it?
But his were always that they told a story, but there'd often be stuff going on in different corners, like there'd be a boy like playing with a dog, like just in the little doorway. The main subject was a panzer going through a town or something, but there'd be this other stuff. It was life, going on. Fantastic stuff. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah.
Just a quick check back on the chat. Thank you very much, Dave, for 5 gifted Man's Model Moments memberships. That's very much appreciated. Thank you, sir. And also should publicly say, Dave very kindly popped into the shop and lent me a Border Models Nashorn for the upcoming best modeling AFV company in the world video, which so I've got to do lots of measurements, and I did all the hardness testing on plastic.
I saw your last one you did on that, and I'm thinking, bloody how much work is that?
It was a lot, which is why I'm doing more, because it's like some of it's already been done. I need to get more out of the work I put in. It's interesting actually what comes through, what the differences are when you start to split it out by category, by like aircraft and AFVs and like naval subjects. I'm doing one video which is going to be the finalist for those, and I'm going to do one video which is going to be the finalist for the sort of more civilian, kind of like civilian figures and space and sci-fi, because they're quite separate. And I'll do all the 12 finalists for each of those categories, and I'll do individual ones scattered through videos in the future, so no definitive timeline. But
best you don't set yourself a deadline for something like
God,
that.
No, never set yourself deadlines on YouTube. For individual videos maybe, but no, thank you very much, Dave, for that. Gary T, who I know is Stuart, but I'll always call you Gary T on here, because otherwise people know what I'm talking about, and there are other Stuarts. No apologies needed for being late. You turn up whenever you want. Taggart said, for me, it's as long as it looks realistic, I'm happy, but would be unhappy if something was obviously wrong. Cough, airfix black book. Yeah, we've all made that kind of error. I
Yeah,
think the difference is that we are all individuals, and I've made mistakes
I'm
before.
not.
I've made reference acknowledged.
I had to get that in. Sorry.
As you can see, somebody wearing this T-shirt appreciates that. So
Yeah.
these are the elements needed to deal with stupidity. So
Brilliant.
yeah, I mean, the difference is, of course, a company should have checks and balances to stop the silly things creeping through. Everybody's prepared
Yes,
to give.
but also you have to look at their reaction when it was pointed out and they'd realised what happened.
Yeah, yes, you do.
And I remember Edward when they did their 32nd scale 109E, and they got the canopy wrong, and people pointed it out, and they doubled down. I went, no, we are right, and it was clearly wrong.
Yeah,
And then there was a lot of humble pie after that.
Yeah. If you're going to double down on something, somebody needs to go and double check and be like, no,
Yeah.
absolutely, we were right. Let's cite our references and stuff. If you can do all of that, you're good.
Yeah.
Because obviously that usually shows that you're right. And if you weren't, then at least you've shown, well, we had good evidence for it. Okay, it might have turned out that some of that was faked or whatever. But
Yeah.
I mean, the 109 is fairly well documented.
Yeah, and then they did it again with the G6 in 48 with the
dear.
wingspan, and you're like, really, fellas? But then kudos to them. They completely they tore it up and started again, and you think, well, how much money is that down the pan?
Yeah, that's a lot.
So, but fair play to them that they did.
Now I know this story because he's a channel member, so he has my Discord, and we chat about these things. Over 120 stencils on the airfix Sabre. So, as I mentioned on Discord, I know a lot of people that omit all of those little stencils from airfix kits because airfix and the cartograph decals, they're great decals, but it does get soul destroying when you put on like the, especially when you got decal number 162. It's just like, oh, really? And
yeah, and wouldn't it be nice on a decal sheet if they could number it top left 1, 2, 3 all the way along, and then next so you could find it?
Yes, it would.
As opposed to a complete scattergun on the decal sheet.
I think airfix are not bad at that now. I think with the
they're not bad.
But
the Zukimura F4
Japanese, okay.
Yeah. My goodness me.
We're using the wrong alphabet.
Oh, wait.
A few other, I won't say late because you're welcome at any time, but a few others popping into the chat. Guys, remember, if you want to ask a question to myself or just as a general one or to Jamie specifically, pop it in with question at the front. Makes it just easy to scan through and pick it out because you are very chatty, which is always nice. It's always good to see your participation, but difficult sometimes to pick stuff out amongst all of that, which ends up with me being horrendously behind the chat. And I don't want to miss anything that people are asking if possible. Oh yeah, so Craig says the B-17 by airfix had the decals well laid out. They are, I think, the design team at airfix. I met them a couple of times now, and I mean they are all very genuine about wanting to improve the experience for modelers, which I think is, you can't ask more really of a design team in a manufacturer of something which is by their own sort of admission is the wrong word, but they have basically said, I mean, Chris said, what he produces isn't the final thing. He produces something that then other people take to the finish line, which is an interesting way to look at it. And also they're really interested in that process. So I think it's great that they want that, and they have the layout. They try to do, even the parts through the model, which always gets me. I don't know about you, Jamie. It's older kits, and you find it when you've been building newer kits, and then you go to an older kit. I was building a Hasegawa F7, the Corsair. It's an actually nice kit. It's from the late 80s, early 90s, I think. Very crisp. Parts all over. It's like, here's G6 and C7 and A4. It's just like, why couldn't it just be parts A1, 2, and 3? Jesus.
Yeah, it'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Airfix have been doing that. So, and with the decals as well. And certainly when
and with their big stenciled ABC, lettering the sprues so you can easily find them.
Yeah.
Edward's still, I'm going, right, well, which sprue is this?
Yes.
Oh, it's C. Right. In fact, that's one of the first jobs I do is I get a bit of masking tape over itself, and I'll get a Sharpie, and I'll write it in big, as Judge Rinder would say, the sprue letter, so I can easily just grab it.
Yeah. I'm not organised enough to do that. I should probably take a leaf out of your book and do that. That's.
I think it's probably the military in me. Everything's got to be laid out.
Yes.
One step at a time.
It's good philosophy. It's a good philosophy. Just got the 148th Walrus. Decal number 4 is a load of footprints. I think that's how they used to denote like the walk here areas on the wing, isn't it? On the old Walrus. Happened on it was like black footprints, like going along.
Yeah, and then footprints with a little red X through.
Yeah, for don't walk here.
Don't walk here. Yeah.
Okay, just catching up. Question. Jamie, I really enjoyed your AN2 build. Any plans for doing similar builds?
Yeah. So the AN2, that was the post-apocalyptic one. So no plans at the moment to do any more post-apocalyptic. But what tends to happen with those builds that I've done is just something just fires off in the synapses. That'll be cool as a post-apocalyptic, and then I get really enthusiastic, and then I've got to do it. And it all started quite a few years ago now when the 32nd scale Bronco came out. And I just looked at that and thought that would be really cool as a post-apocalyptic thing. I think there was that ocean. I think it's called The Ocean Maker, which was a short animated film. It's about 50 minutes. You go and watch it on YouTube. Brilliant film. And the main protagonist in that, she flies a Mohawk, but it's got a Catalina wing, which is actually a scale smaller. And then when the Bronco came out, I think, oh, that would be really cool. So I put some Pratt & Whitney 2800s on it. I redid the undercarriage. I put some live resin miniguns. I completely rebuilt the cockpit in Albion Alloys framing, and I got parts from a Wimic and used that, and just the imagination just poured out of me. And then then I was kind of spent with that. And then I was at Yeovilton for a meeting, and I had the afternoon off, and I thought I'll go around the museum. And the Wyvern's in there, the prototype. And I looked at it and I thought, now the Wyvern, that's such a funky looking thing.
Like a weird looking aircraft, isn't it?
Yeah, that would look cool as a post-apocalyptic machine. But I got a Hellcat nose, grafted that on the front, redid the and off I went. And I did the Airfix Defiant in natural metal with an IL2 rear gunner thing, and I put the BMW 801 from a Focke-Wulf 190, built all the engine mounts, bunged that on the front. So
you improved it then, basically.
Well, yeah, exactly. So every now and again, just a spark goes off, and it could be any, like I say, it was the film originally, and then I saw an aeroplane in the museum, and then Airfix released the Defiant, and I went, that's a funky looking aeroplane. That would be cool as a post-apocalyptic thing. At complete random. So the Antonov 2 was exactly the same. For some reason, created models had a sale, and it was something like £8 for the 48 scale.
And it's not something you see an awful lot of, is it? I mean, it's a massively produced and used aircraft.
Yeah.
And to be fair, in a post-apocalyptic world, it probably would be one of the only things you could fly, because I mean, the things are, I mean, they're Soviet tanks, aren't they? Really?
Yeah, exactly. You know, and I just thought, right, that's cheap. An AN2, that's a big model. I could do that as a derelict thing, because I like doing derelict models. And then I just thought, exactly what you said, post-apocalyptic. It's like the cockroach of the aviation world, this thing.
Yes.
So again, I put a 2800 on the nose. I got 2 Napier Sabre engines, the Brassin ones from the for the Tempest, bung them on the wings. And a friend of mine, Nige, he does 3D printing his own bits and pieces.
Yeah.
And he designed like a, because I'm ex-Navy, he designed like an old submarine hatch for the back. And he printed I said, could you do me a toilet? So I put a toilet in there. I just went mental. So it's that spark. And the exciting thing is, I don't know when it's going to happen again.
Yeah.
So the disadvantage now is, because I work abroad, if I get that spark, I'm stuck here. I can't rely on the postal service. So I've got to hope that that spark keeps burning till I get home next time, which could be a couple of months away. Yeah. So the chances of seeing another one is, yeah.
Yeah, the answer is unlikely at the moment until Jamie sees Furiosa, and then there'll be some Mad Max thing.
Yeah.
Quick one from Craig. How long were you a WAFU for?
WAFU. So we say that stands for weapon and fuel user. The boat driver said it stood for wet and useless. Yeah, so I was in the Fleet Air on for 23 and a half years. So joined in 96 and then left in sort of early 2020. So a long time.
Long time indeed. So Gene says, I think there's a difference between realism, authenticity, and correct impression. For example, 1/72 aircraft rivets would be massive in reality, but it looks right. So yeah, I think that's, I mean, I think Jamie and I are probably in the same boat here, in that I think about how it looks. And I think, and again, just going back to your video, Jamie, which I think it was like something like why appreciating is a bit rubbish, something like that. The title was.
Or I think it was yeah. So I think it was something like why I don't like.
Yes.
Appreciating.
Yeah.
I chose that very carefully.
And you have to on YouTube. Well,
yeah,
you can do. I mean,
yeah,
I'm sometimes deliberately provocative because that's just me. But I mean,
it's good every now and again for clickbait, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I don't think clickbait is. Well, clickbait is bad. I think having a provocative title that you follow up with is fine. You know, if you answer the question that you're asking. What I hate is these ones that's just like, you know, that obviously you click it to see what the answer to the question is, and then never answer the question. They never even give you, you know, a discussion of the question. It's just to get you to click it. And they're the kind of only things that learn a dislike from me. You know, it's just like, okay, you've wasted my time. You know, that's time I can never get back. You haven't fulfilled a promise, so screw you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we are fairly aligned. And you know, to me, you do see a lot of style. I would say over stylized is the phrase, and not that if that's what you want to do as a modeler, then go for it. Modeling, as I've said in many things, is what you want it to be. If you just want to slap stuff together and paint it sky blue pink with yellow dots on, then more power to you. If that's what
Exactly.
you like, then that's what you like. But I think one of the points you made in the video was, a lot of what you see at model shows is so over stylized in that terms, but in a, let's call it, realistic, pseudo-realistic way.
Yeah.
Very heavy demarcations between panel lines and panels.
Yeah.
With no what do you call it? Variation, color variation within the panel itself. So no subtlety, no color interest or anything like that, which is in itself quite unrealistic. Now, sometimes it can look striking and it can draw the eye and it can even look fantastic. But is that realistic? No, not really. It's a stylized version. So
exactly. And I think if you're, with pre-shading, when I'm talking about pre-shading, I'm talking about spraying usually black over the panel lines and sometimes the rivet lines to break up the color, which is fine. But if you're aiming for realism, I don't think it's the path you really want to take, because I think the result isn't what you're aiming for. That's my opinion. Now, I did pre-shading back in the day, but I stopped doing it because I wasn't, being around aeroplanes all the time. I could see it wasn't achieving what I was hoping to achieve.
Yeah. You see, I because I do pre-shade. I pre-shade. I also don't pre-shade, but I think it's when you're using, and again, what you're talking about is pre-shading panel lines specifically and rivet lines and nothing else. Because if you're going to do just that, and it does create a very stark variation, because what you're aiming for is color variation, color interest. You're breaking up, you've got big panels, on a wing. If this was all just one color, or even as it is, I mean, it looks absolutely flat here anyway. So it just shows you, from 3 feet away, or, well, that's not even 2 feet away from the camera, you lose a lot anyway. But on large flat areas, they do look flat. If you just paint them one color, again, go back to realism, they're completely unrealistic. If you painted an F-35 just gray and left it at that, maybe not an F-35 because they have ram taping and stuff, but anything like a Concorde, if you just paint it white, it won't look like Concorde. The color is too flat. So you're trying to break that up, by pre-shading, by simulating or trying to simulate shadows and panel lines, accumulate dirt and things. Just panel lining by itself, evenly distributed over the model, again, isn't representing the way light works. So I think the trick for me in any realism is look at stuff. Look at photos, look at the way that light actually interacts, because all we are doing when we're painting, any artist will tell you, it's all about light. Look at Vermeer, master of light. How does he achieve that? He doesn't have light in his paintings. He's using pigments. It's just like, always blows my mind when you look at like the great artists like Vermeer, who just have this control of stuff. When you actually look up if you go to an art museum, I'd encourage anybody to go to an art museum, look at the really, the masters of, and I'm not just talking about the famous ones, even like the people who aren't very well known are still amazing compared to most of us. You go up and you look, and it's just like that point of light in the eye. It's just a blob of paint. Do we have a blob of paint in our eye? No, we don't. We don't have that specific, but it gives that impression. When you get up close to a painting, especially an impressionistic painting, it looks like nothing. It looks like a mess. But when you step back, again, the impression it gives you is of reality. So I would encourage anybody to look at that. Look at rust. Take pictures of buildings, and even your car. Look at your car tires and the way they're not black. It's just observation, and then trying to put that, if you're really going for realism, trying to emulate that. I've likened it before in the way of, if you've ever done art at school, if you've ever taught art at school, or if you go and buy a book or go on the internet about art, if you ask a child to paint a tree, they paint a brown stem with a green top. That's not how a tree looks. It doesn't look like a tree. You know it's a tree because our brains are trained to that and they can recognize that, all that kind of stuff. But trees aren't brown. The trunk of a tree generally isn't brown. They're usually grayish brown, and they have a lot of texture and all kinds of stuff. If you actually look at photos of trees, and the brown that you would assume in your mind, they're going to be completely different.
Yeah.
So it's about that, referencing reality, and then how do I actually create that? Because it's not just getting brown and doing that, or even that exact color, and then just doing that. And I think that is, for me, learning how to paint, learning how to model, and do all of these things. It's relatively easy, right? Learning all these techniques we build on, again, comes with time and experience. Actually knowing where to paint, where to model, that's hard. That to me is the bit that takes the time. It's like chess, it's easy to learn, lifetime to master. To me, that's my learning journey is, how do I do that? How do I do? Is it with filters? Is it with oils? Is it with marbling, pre-shading, in addition to other stuff, to create that color variation, texture, and depth? And I like to try things. They don't always work.
Yeah. Well,
but
yeah.
As long as I've learned something from it,
Yeah, exactly. And I think because my approach is a layered approach. So I will put down my base coat, and I will tint the base coat as I go along. So I'll start with a fairly opaque layer, then I'll add the highlights, and I tend to exaggerate the highlights, and I do almost like the reverse of pre-shading, if you like, with post shading. So I'll lighten along panel lines, and rather than like a marble effect, I tend to do it a little bit more cloudy. Then I'll go in with a darker version of the base color, and then if you just saw that, you go, well, that doesn't look terribly realistic because it's too exaggerated. But because I'm doing a layered approach, I'll do filters, I'll do oil weathering. Just the fact of putting a varnish layer down is going to blend things as well.
Yeah.
And by the time I get to the end of it, after all the the final dust application, it's all kind of layered on top of each other and blended in. And it's going back to what we said earlier of the fooling the eye.
Yeah.
By doing all these different techniques, you're almost like creating noise in the image, which makes it more interesting to look at. And when I'm using oils, I'm using oils for fading and highlights and lowlights all at the same time. And doing the oil dot technique is I'm very careful about where I'm putting the oil. So I'll concentrate the darker tones, in the joint between the wing and the fuselage, or around the engine cowlings and things like that. And I'll do more of the fading type tones on the horizontal surfaces and the top of the fuselage, for example. And doing that again, it's all adding to that illusion and trying to fool the eye to make this little thing, appear to be a full size little thing.
Yeah. And if all of this sounds horribly daunting to anybody in the chat, it's just like, it sounds all very highbrow, talking about Vermeer and light and all this kind of stuff. In actual fact, we're here with our sexy gogs on, with our model in front of us, pushing little bits of oil around and then looking at it and thinking, no, that doesn't look right.
Yeah.
So, and again, we all started from the same place, right? I didn't come into the hobby suddenly, talking about oil paints and filters and stuff. This is all stuff I've learned. I think the great benefit for anybody who is, just getting back into their modeling journey now is that YouTube exists. You can learn about all this stuff. You can look at individual techniques and try it at a much earlier stage. And
Yeah.
by the time you're as old as me, you'll be a much better modeler than I am.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly. So, I mean, for example, that the oil dot technique. So, it must be 10 years ago now. I just all of a sudden I went, right, I fancy making tanks. I saw one of Mig Jimenez's DVDs. Went out, bought all the other Mig Jimenez DVDs, watched them and watched them and watched them, and then I bought a cheap. It was like £5. It was an old 35th Stug, and I slavishly watched the video and copied everything, and the model was crap. And I went, oh, I wasn't expecting that, because I was just copying it. So the next one I did, I tried to do just inject a little bit of thought of what am I doing here?
Yeah.
And then as I was doing more, I was learning why I was doing it, as well as how I was doing it. And then I started to modify, well, a little bit heavier here, not so much here. And I know that's not going to look right there, so I won't do it, but it will look great there. So I'm modifying and learning as I go along. And then one thing Mig did in the videos, I remember on a 16th scale, I think it was, King Tiger, is he just put all the dots all over it and then just streaked it down to blend it vertically on the vertical surfaces. And it looked great. And then I remember I thought, right, I'm going to try that on an aeroplane. And knowing aeroplanes intimately, I was like, no, aeroplanes, 98% of their time are just sat on the ground. So it's not going to get all this like fading in streaks over the wings with the airflow. It doesn't happen like that. Yes, you get dirt will streak, and we've all been on an aeroplane, airline, and looked out the window, and as modelers, we got that eye and we're looking at the dirt streaking on the wing and stuff, because we're sad like that. But I realized with an aeroplane, you need a different blending technique, because that just doesn't look right if you're just going to streak it back. So I started blending it sort of in situ, if you like. And I was like, yeah, but it took an accident and a failure to get there.
But I think, I mean,
all of our modeling journeys are riddled with failures.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to make, actually, because people in the chat will be like, oh, I tried that and it didn't really work and stuff. It's like, yeah, don't think that we, came to modeling, tried these techniques and it worked first time, because it doesn't. And you learn more, I feel, from when you get it wrong. And like you say, then trying to understand why does, that one in the video look good and the one I have on my bench where I followed what I think slavishly step by step is the same, why doesn't mine look like that? And it's just like, well, the devil is in the detail, isn't it? It's in the application, it's in how it's blended, it's in the experience. It's I remember showing it was a friend of mine who wanted one of the World War II landing crafts. He had an airfix one, and he said, would you paint it for me? And he was down in near Hendon in Harlow, and near Hendon. And I went down, I took my little portable compressor with me. It's like, yeah, I'll do it. And I showed him what I did, because he wasn't an airbrusher. And then I just brought some pigments with me, and I just but of course these things rusted like hell, they weren't built to last a lifetime. They were built to get across the channel once, and then if there were any use afterwards, that was a bonus. And it's just like, and I just got the powder and was just dabbing it on, and then just occasionally just wetted my brush and then just streaked it down. And he was just like, how are you doing that? And I said, and it was just second nature to me by that time. It was just like, and you don't think about that. You don't think really about what you do. It just becomes that second nature. But at one time, I was exactly the same. And I learned those skills from people like Phil, who I mentioned. And they look amazing when somebody who's been doing them all their, for 5 years or whatever has been doing them or has learnt that. But that doesn't mean they are not actually pretty basic skills, and it's just a matter of getting used to them. It's just,
Yeah.
I'm sure if you look back at your earlier self, any of us, anybody in the chat, think about your modeling, whether you've just got into it, it's your second or third model, you'll get there, your fourth and fifth, and you'll look back to your first and think, how have I improved that much in that amount of time? If you look back 10 years or when you started, so I think it's always that matter of just try.
And it's not going to be linear either.
No.
You'll get better, then you'll plateau.
Yeah.
Then you'll get better, then you'll plateau.
Sometimes you feel like you're going backwards.
Yeah, sometimes it might do that before you come back at,
Yeah.
One step back, actually, 2 step forward thing.
I've had that where I've actually had to try and unlearn bad habits, to get to a point where I want to try this, but my brain is naturally going to what I used to do. I got to kind of get out of that and just kind of the old Matrix, free your mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, for example, I mean, these days I'll use black super glue. Oh, hi, Sully. These days I use black super glue to glue my fuselage halves together because it's quick, will never shrink, and I think it's the perfect cement for fuselage halves, and I can get a fuselage half sanded, polished, scribed, re-riveted in 30 minutes. When I did the F-14, I thought, it's Tamiya. I'm going to go back to using cement on the nose, and I put it together. I was then because I do 12-hour days, so when I get back, the last thing I want to do is any modeling. So I left it for sort of 4 days. Come back to it, sanded it down. Yeah, brilliant. And then a week later, bloody ghost seams. And I was like, what? This is why I don't use cement. Why did I go back to that? And it's Tamiya. It fitted perfectly, and I didn't use that much glue. Really bloody annoying to, that's why I use black super glue.
I try and avoid super glue at all possible occasions.
Well, I was really reluctant to try it, but that black stuff has got some thing in it that makes it less brittle. So the chances of it cracking are very much reduced that if you're going to use clear super glue. And I just think it's wonderful stuff. And yeah,
I tried to get.
I'm going to say now, I'm never going to go back to it. But
yeah, it'll crack now.
Yeah, wait.
As soon as you say something never does, it automatically.
Oh, happens. I know. I know. But I try and run a drop of extra thin or something if I can get it in there inside and let it run down the inside to to get a bit of weld, just for the protection. And I have cracked a seam, but that's my fault trying to drill something or and I've cracked it. It's not that I've dropped it and it's sheared.
I've usually found that in 99.99% of cases where I've cut myself or damaged a model or anything like that, it's usually because I'm using the wrong tool or it's over application of force or incorrect use of force, usually too much, and I'm trying to shortcut something by, forcing it. And that's always a bad idea. It's just take your time. Modeling isn't it's not a race, even with yourself, and usually the time I screw up, it's because I disregard my own rules and
exactly the same.
I'll just do this. Yeah, night shift has a lot to blame on. We can blame him for a lot. So
yeah.
Sully, you're welcome to join in. Oh, I don't think I put the link in the Discord actually. That'll probably be why. I think John's definitely got it, so he should be joining us shortly. Oh God, I don't know if I can do that midstream. Bear with me a second, and I'll see if I can get the link in the general Discord we use. Talk among yourselves, people. In fact, let me go and have a look at the comments here, because I know there was a question. Here we go, taggers. And then Jamie can answer this while I'm off looking at Discord links. Have either of you used a metal barrel for a tank? And if you have, what have you found is the best glue to use for it? I have an answer to this, but I'll let you answer it first, Jamie.
Yeah, I have used metal barrels. I think they're great because you don't have to clean the seam. The disadvantages is painting it. It is more vulnerable, I think, to paint adhesion problems. But to glue it in, most of the barrels I've used, it's a push fit, so you don't actually have to glue it. But if I do glue it, I just put the tiniest dab of super glue on the end, and then push it in, and then twist it as well to kind of spread the glue around, and that way it doesn't ooze out. But I use the barest minimum I think I can get away with, is how I do that. And then what I'll do before I glue it is I will polish the barrel and clean it with some lacquer thinner, so it's completely clean and I've keyed it. I'll then use some special metal primer. VMS's is brilliant, and I'll just brush that on. And then I'll normally use my normal primer over the top of that. And then so far, touch wood, I've not had any paint problems flaking off or anything like that.
Yeah, I have used them. I tend to be heavy-handed with this kind of stuff. I tend to use 5-minute epoxy on like big photo etch, like structural photo etch or metal. So I usually tack it in place with like a little super glue, just enough to put it on wherever, or like you said with barrels. But because they are usually so much heavier, and you've only got that one point of attachment, I want that to be secure. And 5-minute epoxy is fantastic stuff, but you do need to either support it or, like I say, tack it in place to start with, because otherwise it will shift during that 5 minutes. 5 minutes is quick for epoxy, but it's a hell of a long time in modeling.
And once then you're toast if it glues.
It's fixed forever. It'll be stronger than the rest of the model. You'll have to carve the model off. You'll end up with your metal barrel, but that's all. If you get it wrong. So, but they do have a lot of advantages, as Jamie said. It's got. I mean, they're much more realistic, if we want to use the realism word. You don't have that seam. They're very nice. Disadvantages: they do tend to be expensive if they don't come with the kit, and you have that paint adhesion problem. I always use, don't always, but usually use a spray primer or a lacquer primer anyway. So that isn't usually so much of a problem, as long as you're not handling it too much. And here we go. Sully is joining us. Good evening, Sully.
Hello. Just give me 2 seconds, because I wasn't prepared. I was going to make a cup of tea, and I'll be back.
Absolutely. Go ahead. See you in a second. So yes, metal barrels, good thing. Number of ways. I can say, the internet has lots of solutions for you. Use the one that is best for you. The ultimate answer to, I think, most modeling things is, it's your model, you do what you like. There is help and advice out there if you want it, and you can take it. You can take it with a pinch of salt, or you can ignore it as you wish. If I can, and I'm sure, Jamie, you feel the same way, if I can help people achieve the result they want, it wouldn't be the model that I might make, or it might be. That doesn't matter. Make what you want, enjoy what you do. And if we can help you achieve that result, then that's great.
Exactly. And you'll always learn something from every model. Even if it goes wrong, you've learned something.
Yeah.
And you can apply those lessons to your next one.
Yeah, and I would encourage people as well, if you're interested in realism, don't just look at modeling YouTube videos, look at miniature painting videos, look at videos about art in general. I'm sure people do look at a lot of this, but the way artists look at light, and miniature painters do this as well, because they are, I would say, closer to art in that respect as well. But things like volumetric painting and stuff. And it does help, especially if you want to create dioramas with figures, because figure painting is a very different type of painting than painting a model. And I think both sides, I've said this numerous times, I think both sides are fairly removed from each other, and I think both can learn things from each other. Because if you look at 40K vehicles, for instance, which are mainly built by miniature painters, you look at them and think, actually, I know that I could make that better in quite a short amount of time with just doing a few things. But they just wouldn't think of it because they are very focused on like the way the figures look and the way that they're representing those. Not to say that that vehicle doesn't look good. It's just you're looking at it with a different eye than they are. So I watch quite a number of different ones. Have you ever watched a guy called Marco Frazzoni, Jamie?
No, I don't think I have.
Have a look at his videos. I mean, he's an amazing figure painter, but he also has the most outrageous Italian accent ever. Just his videos are both entertaining, like informative, and hilarious all at the same time. My girlfriend, who's Spanish, is convinced it's fake.
Really?
Oh, and we also have John joining us. Good evening, John.
Hi, everyone. How are you doing? Hi, Jamie. Hi, Alex.
Good. How's your week going?
It's been busy. I've been really busy with work, and I've just been sitting here listening to the fabulous conversation that's been going on. So it's great to.
You got another podcast coming on in the background, or?
Yeah. So all good. Hiya, Sully.
All right, John.
How's it going, matey?
Right. Yeah, I'll add to that, Mark. The bit what must be even worse is for the Irish, because that's where he lives in Ireland, apparently. I think. So it must be even more confusing with his accent.
That would be incredible.
But he is good. I watch an odd couple of his now and again.
Yeah,
but
he does some
he's pretty good.
Outrageous.
It usually depends on what he does, to be fair, usually.
Yeah.
Because I watch quite a few other ones, you see, so trying to keep how many YouTubers I'm following because it gets too much.
So, Sully, talking about realism versus art, you are very much a, I would say,
mentalist.
Realistic modeler in terms of some of the latest products you've been putting out there, the old Gannet and Sea King.
I try.
Brutal realism.
It's a little bit, yeah. I guess the far extremes of it rather than. I mean, I do generally try for realism, but like it says, the Sea King and the Gannet and the Chipmunk are probably the most extreme ones that I've done, because they are the most heavily weathered ones I think I've ever done. And again, mostly, and it's all from. Okay, so the Chipmunk and the Sea King are on a technicality fictional, if you like, because normally I will follow photos. So I did for both of those, but not for some that they actually are, if that makes any sense. So the Chipmunk was really difficult because I couldn't find any abandoned chipmunks, because they've either been destroyed or they're kept really, really well.
Yeah.
So that was a really hard one. But fortunately, I looked at a lot of real life references for them, which that was really easy to find. And because the stuff that I've got at work made it even easier for that. Sea King was similar, though. I did use some genuine photos for that, but because it was turned into a chicken coop, it was a little bit more difficult because I couldn't find a reference to a Sea King that had already been turned into a chicken coop, so that was a little bit more difficult. And again, it was from literally taken from actual photos at the state it was in at the time.
Yeah.
So everything is pretty much 99% at least 98% accurate on it.
So, what about your little Bren carrier, which I should encourage people to go and have a look if they
Yeah, a little
haven't
Brim.
already.
Quite sweet, wasn't it?
So that is not a heavily weathered vehicle. How do
Not
you
really,
create,
no.
But how do you create realism then, as you would see it, in something which is just a standard in use vehicle, not abandoned, heavily weathered that you can hide things behind?
So with that one, there was a lot of things that were hidden with that one. Tell
them the trick.
So with the like a tank in particular, because effectively that's what it is. So a lot of it is like sort of like mud weathering. So a lot of that I actually, because usually we use I've usually been using AK texture pastes and stuff like that. And the one particular I've used, which I usually use for groundwork, just to build up, it has like a little bit of kind of like grit in it. But if you watch the video, you'll see once it goes on, it looks okay, but the grit is so sporadic and it just didn't look right because it comes out in quite looks like fairly good chunks. So what I found, and I don't even know why I decided, he was sat actually because he was sat in front of me, but I don't know why I did it. But I used baby powder to bulk it out, and it actually made a really good. So it's made a really good like paste. So I just mixed it mixed it with the paint, so water would have just done, and then I sprayed it all to uniform it all a bit later on. So I don't even know why I even come up with that, but I think it was just sat in front of me. I thought, oh, I'll try that. And then with it, I just did rain marks, which I've seen before. I've done before, but I've done it with oils, oil paints instead. But I actually used acrylic paint this time, so I just put a fairly heavy gloss on it. Or was it? No, it was a semi-gloss, I think, actually. And I think I put water on it, and then because I thinned the paint quite a bit as well, and then literally just slopped it on, and then with a dry brush just streaked it down, and sort of trying to neaten it up a little bit, just to give the impression of like it's rained a bit, it's dusty area, a bit of rain, it just streaks down the side of the vehicle, and then everything else was just like my usual little bit chipping and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think the important thing that you mentioned there actually is, I think something that a lot of people not get hung up on, but perhaps either get disheartened by or don't consider, is you said it didn't look right when you'd done it. And so then you were looking at something else. So don't assume, people in the chat, that once you buy a product from, an other reputable supplier, that it is going to do exactly what it says on the tin. Even Ronseal sometimes doesn't produce the results that you expect.
Doesn't do what it says on the tin.
But the important thing is, you look at it and you think, if it doesn't look right to you, then don't settle for it. You can, as I've said before, there are no particular dead ends in modeling. There's always something that you can do, so don't think it's just like, this is the end of the world. I've tried it. It's rubbish. I'm not going to do that. Just think, well, what is missing? It doesn't look quite right. What do I think? Why doesn't it look right? And if you're not sure, ask other people. Ask modelers you trust. I've done this. Don't necessarily go to someone like Reddit, who you'll get there's always that little thin end of the Gaussian curve of arseholes, and they're inevitably going to be on Reddit. But ask people whose opinion that you trust, or at least believe, for a bit of feedback, and take it from there, or just try something. Like actually said, I wouldn't say try it on the model to start with, but try it on some scrappers.
No, always if you've got because if you've got an old gash model that you don't care for anymore, just use that. But the thing is that I've seen it quite a few times. Just don't be scared to try it. That's always because I've seen it quite a lot. There's one I did recently. I think it might have been it was on the Sea King of the Gannet actually, and they says, I'm too scared to try it. I said, well, don't. I generally, and I'll be honest, if somebody asked me, I have sat and looked at a model for weeks on end, trying to think, oh, can I do it? Is that the right thing? And in the end, I went, do you know what? If I sit here any longer, I'm not going to get it finished. The video's not going to be coming out anytime soon. I need to get that video out. Just do it. And 9 times out of 10, fortunately, touching wood, it's always worked out.
Yeah.
It's rare that I've done, because usually it is something I have kind of done before, but it may be on a different type of model.
Yeah.
You know, so like I've got an F14 I'm working on at the moment, and I'm not used to jets at all. I think I've built 2 ever. And that's a different type. To me, that's a different type of weathering because they weather slightly differently.
Yeah.
To some of the older stuff. So there's going to be a lot on that I will use from previous experience, but there's going to be a few bits on there that I'm just going to have to just do it and hope for the best with it. I mean, I have watched a few other videos on the same kit. The only problem is they're a completely different colour than the one I'm doing, because they're all the sort of like the grey standard, you know, the latest standardised grey. The one I'm doing is, it's going to be easier. Is that one?
Oh right, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, can you see that? Sorry, I can't see that one. So trying to find
Jolly Roger, whatever.
Yeah. So actually trying to find
BF-84, isn't it?
Yeah, I've struggled to find actual photos of that squadron's aircraft that aren't relatively because I know, particularly being carrier based, they would have been.
We might have
pretty
some
rough.
context for you.
Yeah. So it's I found 1 or 2, but they weren't very good because the age of it, the photos aren't very good.
Yeah.
So I'm going to apply some of the stuff I've seen in the grey marking, but try and put it within those colours of that one. And again, hope for the best with it, because I can't just make it clean and just do a few panel lines on it. It's got to look a little bit rough.
That'll kill you.
Because it's just not right. Well, it won't be finished. It'll be sat there. It's not even finished. Why? Do you know what I mean? So it's beyond me. I've done it.
You need to do a multi-part video, Sully. Like Jamie, you need to do part 1, which is just like doing the like clean version, and then like part 2 is just like finishing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got to admit though, there's only been a couple recently, or last couple of years that I've done. I'm going, I don't think I actually want to weather it because it actually looks quite cool. And I thought, no, I'm just not even being true to myself if I do that.
That's not Sully.
It's not me. No, that's it. And I've already done. And they were commissioned, so I had to do obviously the way they were wanted. I had to do 2 clean, and I felt sick giving them back because they just wasn't finished.
It's what the customer wants.
I know they wouldn't let me do. One was a motorbike. I was like, please put some road dust on at least. No, it's got to be clean.
Oh no.
So yeah.
Remember, the customer is always right in matters of style, which is the full quote, by the way. It's not the customer is always right about everything in matters of style. So a quick question here, which I'd like everybody's opinion on. And it's going to prompt something which I want to ask John Alec as well. So Garrity says, I've never built a car model. Ideally, I'd love a 70s to 80s Formula 1 car. There were some cool ones, but they are too expensive, and I feel that as well. So what racing car model kit would you recommend for my first? And John, if you want to helm that one, because you're probably, out of all of us, the largest car modeler, I would say.
For an F1, for an F1.
Well, he said racing car model kit, so
okay.
It's a bit more leeway.
That Tamiya Honda RA272. I think it's 120th, not 124th, 120th.
That's weird.
That was a pleasure to build. So the 60s F1 cars they're my favorite. Those kind of Clark used to drive around and stuff. And
do not buy a 1/12 scale Tamiya Lotus 79 if you find one on eBay. Because when I finally finish with that commission, I'll be happy.
You're like, oh, good riddance.
Yeah.
No, that
nice model, but
that was a really fun build, and the body work is not complex. It absolutely falls together. There's a ton of videos on YouTube for that Honda RA272, think it's 1966. You can do it in a couple, 2 different drivers. So the number decals are a little bit different. Just beautiful kit, easy to put together, and you'll end up with a really nice looking F1 car. A decade earlier than the 70s, but yeah, that would be my recommendation or suggestion. Yeah.
Anybody else, Jamie or Sully, you have ideas about racing?
I am so far out of my comfort zone with this. I wouldn't know where to start. I'm the same. Hands up, not a clue.
I'm the same, but funnily enough, I was in Hobbycraft last night looking.
Shame on you.
Yeah, I know. I needed some primos desperate. It's only down the road from work. And funny enough, because I've been looking, well, potentially be looking at doing a rally car, but I wasn't quite sure. But anyway, yeah, I'd say the same person. So the Tamiya ones. I mean, it depends on obviously your budget, but I mean, they're rough. If you remember rightly, they're roughly around, or they max out about 35 quid. So it would depend, but I mean, I think for your best bet really is going to would be a Tamiya because they fit.
Yeah, a relatively recent Tamiya car kit would be my recommendation. I mean, Fujimi, Aoshima, they do some nice kits.
Good actually.
They do tend to be on the more expensive side, the Fujimi ones, because I know I've got a couple of. I think they're Fujimi, the Tyrrell, the 6-wheeled Formula 1 car. I think that they're about £50 or £60, so they do start to get a little bit more pricey. So I get where you're coming from with that. A not necessarily super recent one, because Tamiya tend to price by the age of the tool. But I mean, a Tamiya kit of the 90s is equivalent to like a lot of manufacturers today. So yeah, I think 90s, mid 90s onwards, Tamiya car kit. Check Scalemates.
Can't go wrong.
You'll find something that you can go there. The
Did
following
they recently release that 6-wheeler, Tamiya? I've got something in my mind saying Tamiya released it recently.
Yeah, a bunch of people have done it. The 6-wheeler, the blue one. It's like Peter,
I think it's such a popular
scale models was doing it and stuff. But
yeah, I know I got a couple of Fujimi kits in recently. That's a recent tooling. I don't know how recent, because again, cars are not. I get stuff into the shop which is good, but not my bag. If you get what I mean. But the following question I have, and again, John, I'm going to be pressing you first on this, and I know Sully's also done some bikes and stuff. So, realism in cars for me is one of the things that puts me off them, because there's such a different thing. Because you don't get cars, military vehicles. You got dust, you got weathering, you got dirt and mud, depending on climate. They were used everywhere. Cars, not so much. So,
hang on.
How do you create a kind of okay. I know there's always the exception that breaks the rules, Sully. But how do you get a realistic kind of looking car?
So I am an armor guy. I'm totally an armor guy. And a couple of years ago, it's like, hey, would do a car. Try to do a car. And it completely brought me out of my comfort zone. And I enjoyed it so much for the challenge. But I think it really helped me with my modeling journey, because I was learning all kinds of new stuff. It's like, I got to keep this pristine, so there's new tools, there's new techniques, there's that kind of stuff, and I just got kind of bit by the bug. I think most people like to see tanks and planes on the channel, and when I do a car video, I tend to almost immediately lose somebody, lose subs and stuff. But that happens. But I enjoy them. I'm a hobbyist. This is my hobby, and so if I can, it's taking that leap out of your comfort zone and learning how to keep things pristine, learning about gloss coats and that kind of stuff. And it's just new. Yeah.
I think that's the important thing as well, is get that proper nice gloss finish afterwards, which is what's put me off for doing a prestige. I do want to do one. It will have some dirt on it, but I do want to do a nice. I do want to do a nice, you know, a good car, because like I says, I want to do I want to do some rally ones, mainly because the dirt aspect and the dust. But they still, they are proper built cars. Like, you know, they've got the proper finishes on them and stuff. And I want to do that, but you know, I haven't got. I don't think I've got. I've just got the VMS gloss, which I haven't tried out yet. So I'm hoping that may do it without needing to try and find one of the most expensive ones that gives you a good finish on it. So I don't know.
Yeah, because
I've only ever made one car model, and I cheated. I did the Revell Trabant, and I did it in. You remember when Edward released the MiG-21, and then they had all the different cartoons for all the different marking options, and the East German one was a Trabant, and I just copied that. So a complete cop out. But there's a channel called A4 Garage.
Yeah,
I stumbled across that just surfing YouTube, recommended videos on the bottom. You know, I went, oh, and it was the he was doing a Mini in 24th scale, and click subscribe, and I watch it avidly.
Yeah.
I don't do car models. I'm never going to do a car model, certainly never to that standard, and the scratch building that guy does.
Fantastic.
But it was only yesterday he was doing the car body of a Mustang.
Yeah.
Polishing it, you know, starts polishing it with 6,000 grit and all the different layers, and then he ends up doing the ceramic coating over it, and it just looked amazing.
He's really good.
Yeah,
I don't like. I don't necessarily channels that don't have anything in them. Like, it's just building the model, but it's ASMR for modeling.
It just kind of draws you in, doesn't it? There's no narration. There's no music.
No, there's just the sound.
The only thing you hear is a click. You know, the snip when he cuts a bit of metal or something.
Occasionally,
but it's just
from his nose.
Captivating. Yeah, it's
totally agree.
But it just draws you in.
Yeah. I was the same. I just come across him by accident. I don't know what I was looking at, but it just come up, and I was like, "Oh, this is amazing."
I have no idea how that guy doesn't have more subs.
No.
I mean, he has. It's like 100. He has, I think, 120. It's like 125 or something. Because Jamie, I was watching I just watched the same video. It just came out. He hadn't put anything out in a while, and God, that guy's just a wizard.
So, the other thing, because I've only built three cars, and again, none of them were that fancy. So if you don't want to do, if you don't really want to do it, like make it all look all, you know, proper. So the first two I did was a VW Beetle, which was a Revell one, and the airfix Aston Martin. I forgot which one was it. The DB, I want to say 6, the racing car one. Both of those were in World War II camo. So the Beetle obviously was as a 109. The Aston I did as because I had the deep spare decals for a Mosquito, and the other one I did was an old banger. Because it's that much of a bang. It's that much of a banger. The wheels just fell off.
Fair to say that's the opposite end of the spectrum to A4 Garage.
Yeah, that's it. And see, because that's what I'd sooner do, because mainly because that's what I know, and I find that because to me cars aren't necessarily over the most interesting to me either, but I do want to do them just to like John was saying, you know, it's my hobby. I want to make what I want to make. You know, I don't follow any of the stuff that goes on, you know, on most of the channels. I don't keep up with, you know, like say for like Alex, for example, like, you know, all the most recent releases, sorry, from different manufacturers and stuff. I don't care for that. to do that myself. I watch them, don't get me wrong, but I'm not interested in doing that sort of thing. Mainly because I, in a fashion, don't care enough to do that. But I just like doing what I like.
You have to care about it? Oh my God. I'm doing it
Well,
wrong.
you know, to make it sound like you're interested. But, you know, I mean, I do tanks, do aircraft. I do anything that looks interesting to me, particularly at the time.
Yeah.
But like you were saying, John, with your cars, when I've done Warhammer stuff, because I like doing it on odd occasions, and I want to put the video out because it just shows that I've done that as well and how I've done it and all that sort of business. But they're the worst performing videos. The first one I did 3 years ago still has, I think, about 96 views on it. It's never moved at all on that. But I think I have lost a couple of subscribers from it. But
take it down and re-upload it with a different thumbnail.
I suppose, but it wasn't one of the better ones anyway. But you know, I've got one on the side here that I'm working on at the moment, which that will go on. No, it won't do very well, but I don't care. I know it's not going to do, but I've enjoyed doing it. I want to show off what I've done and what I can do, and try and improve it on the previous ones that I've done as well.
Yeah,
you know.
I want to highlight a couple of comments here. Colin says, I shy away from car models, even though I have a few in the stash. The painting of the body looks scary. I think a couple of us have said that. That's one of the things that definitely put me off. I think, though, as John said, it's like if you've got to that stage in your modeling journey, your career, whatever you want to call it, like I used to build just for myself. Now I still build for myself, but it's got a different slant on it because I think about what other people might want to watch as well. And it helps me finish those projects, but I also still build what I want. But building things that I wouldn't normally choose, like commissions, like that Lotus 49, you know, it's not a model I'd have ever chosen to build myself. But what I've learned along that way and the differences in skills and techniques I've had to use, or like how I apply things. I've had to do figure painting on a damn thing. I mean, it's, you know, on a 1/12 scale, it's very different. Has been really good for me, you know, good for my skills, maybe not my mental health, but or my nails. But I think if you're at that stage where you want to challenge yourself and want to push yourself, like John said, out of your comfort zone, it's a good thing to do. Just don't put big expectations on yourself. I think our worst critics, as I think Jamie said earlier, are ourselves. And I think we sometimes put too much weight on things and like get really disheartened about it. Just try and take it as, okay, I'm going to do this. And I always liken it to going to a casino, right? You don't go to a casino with your credit card. It's the wrong thing to do. You go with like £20 or £50 or whatever you're prepared to lose. And you assume at the beginning of the night, I will come out with nothing, right? Anything that you come out with at the end of the night above nothing is a plus, right? So think of that modeling of, you know, your first car as that, you know, I don't expect anything out of this model. You know, I expect it's going to look rubbish by the end of it, but I just want to push myself and try. And at the end, if you've got something and you think, you know, that's okay, that's a big step up from if you go into it thinking I want to put all of my, you know, my juice into this, all of my, that sounded wrong. Well, don't do that. All of my skill and like, you know, really try hard on this one. And then you come out with something that looks okay, you'll be disappointed. So I think it's just a mindset thing, you know. And Dutch Dave also said, welcome, by the way. I don't think I welcomed you when you popped in. Building a model car is such a different discipline in the hobby. It is, and can be a good thing, right? Don't do a car, though, if it's not something that interests you and you don't really want to develop any of those skills. Because what's the point, right? It's like, it's your hobby. It's your hobby time. You should enjoy it. So, yeah, if you want to push yourself out of your comfort zone, it's a good thing. If you want to develop those different skills, it's a good thing. If you've got no interest in cars, never want to do cars, and you're quite content doing what you do, then don't put yourself through it. Yeah. So this guy, I always get this wrong. This guy, yeah. So Fenris has joined us in the chat. Welcome, Fenris. The old Tyrrell six-wheeler gets a little bit of love in the comments. Fenris is just finishing a model car. If it's the one that you showed in Discord, I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, good.
Richard Hughes asked a question to me specifically. Will I be going to the Salisbury Model Show this year? I will indeed. Yes, it is not too far away from me. It was a really good show last year. I really enjoyed it. It was a nice day. It always helped. And I came home with far too many models, of which I've built precisely none, I think. But they increased the stash, and I got some really, really nice ones. It was a good experience, and hopefully this time I will find the competition area, because I missed it last time, couldn't find it. But the organisers were really good, and yeah, I do plan to go there again this year. So Fenris says yes. Is it? I think replying to the piece about techniques, primarily a level of shine. So yeah, that actually reminds me of something that I was going to say on the Lotus. So one of the main things for me is I've varnished it, and now I'm going through the process that Jamie talked about. I've used the finest grade sanding stick buffer that I have, to go over it. And now I've got to break out the polishing compound and go through all of that. The only time I've done that in the past is on canopies that I've messed up, right, or that need the seam removed. But having done that, I'm familiar with it at least. So, but am I going to do an A4 garage? I mean, I watched that Mini Cooper video he did.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, he basically built a Mini Cooper.
Yeah. Showroom standard,
an actual Mini Cooper. Working doors and stuff. It's just like, oh my God.
That
to do
SL
that,
Gullwing he did was.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I mean, you've got to, and this is why I say when you come back to modeling, people always say, what model should I do? And I always say, do something you love. To start with, do something you love. It doesn't matter if you mess it up. You can always come back, because if it's something you love, you will want to do it again anyway. When you've got your level of skills, don't leave it and do stuff that you don't really care about, because you won't really care about it. But the love he has for his models, I mean, they are work. I mean, talking about realism or art, that is combining both, isn't it?
That's mind blowing.
It is. It is.
If we can use the term model porn, that A4 garage is just
demonetized.
Yeah. What he said.
Sorry,
I know, the directional thing is really difficult.
Yeah. Sorry. I should have said
that's why I reversed my camera. So to me it looks right.
Okay.
See that?
Alex,
We're
sorry.
all using all the muscles apart from the one that counts, and there's Sully.
You can take it out of my salary, man. Sorry about that. Anyways, the concept. Yeah. Sorry.
So any number, I'll take away all of your salary, John. Any number times 0 is.
I'm getting invited.
Yeah. The all of nothing.
Oh dear. Somebody actually asked, when is the Salisbury show? It's usually in June, I believe. I think it's the beginning of June. It should be available. It's an IPMS show. It should be available on the internet, Facebook. It's usually pretty well publicized. I mean, the weather's nice, so it must be in May or June. That's our window in the UK. Oh, my father-in-law had a 1930 Model A Phaeton, an ICM do one, is the one idea I have. Nice. Yeah, I think anything that has a personal connection, to model is a good one. I think I've moved it now, but I have a Mitsubishi GTO here, which, as John knows, I used to have. So I bought a Tamiya one. Well, again, that was one of those things that I got one for the shop and just popped another one in the basket for myself. So,
but that's funny on that, because obviously with my job, I don't think. No, I built one I built the airfix links when it came out, and I gave it to my observer, and I don't have anything in my cabinet
Really?
that's connected to my career. No,
Is that too familiar?
I don't know. I mean, one of my favorite models in my cabinet is the chipmunk, and I've flown chipmunks, but I didn't do one of mine. I just did the one from the box. It's weird that I don't know why.
I think it's so. I was never interested in cars to start with because I was always interested in subjects that I couldn't see myself. So I was really interested as I was growing up in World War II stuff. I mean, part of that comes from watching war movies and all that kind of stuff as well. But I didn't really play with them as toys. I was into the building of them and painting and then displaying them, that kind of thing. But I used to have a guy who came to the model club when I was up in the Northwest, and he used to do trucks. He drove a truck and he used to model trucks. And I was just like, that would be like me modeling Ford Mondeos because I was a sales rep at the time. And it'd be like,
Yeah.
Why would I? Why would you want to do that? I mean, even when I had my cherry red SI, which was the fastest thing I've ever driven and the fastest I've ever been in a car. 70 miles an hour, of course, as is the legal limit.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Or the 135 that I drove on the German Autobahn, of course, in Scotland. But that's no. Well, I'll edit that bit out for the purposes of Her Majesty's
Yes, constabulary.
Constabulary. It was a long time ago. But yeah, it's just like, it's still a Ford Mondeo. It's just like, really? It's like, so yeah, I kind of get the not wanting to do something you kind of work with, because
my missus says it to me when I come back home. First thing I do is come back home, make a cup of tea, have a smoke. I know I'm in here for 20 minutes.
Making models of the things you've been working with.
Exactly, yeah. And she says, "You're not having enough airplanes." I'm like, no, not in the slightest.
Yeah. But the one exception that the model that I would do I've got a personal connection to is a car, and it's the Peugeot 205 GTI, because that was my first car, and I loved that thing, and I was very lucky to have it.
But it's French.
Yeah,
but it was my first car, and it was the car I used to get max power every week or every month. And then I had this old uncle that I didn't really know died and left me a bit of money, and now I could go out and buy this 205 GTI. It was the 1.6. It was a D-Reg. It cost 1,300 quid. But I loved it. So if any manufacturer made a decent 205 GTI 1.6, then I would make an exception, and I would do that one.
So it's only £1,200 too much then.
Right.
Sorry, I've had bad experience with Peugeot in the past, so I won't buy anything French car wise at the moment. Well, ever.
Well, don't buy Chinese either. I've done a course and it was 7 hours away. I drove back yesterday, and it's a thing called a Jetor that I'd never heard of before.
Oh my God.
The center console, it didn't vibrate, it was shaking like this. Out here, all the cars have got a little alarm that just goes ping, ping, ping when you go over 120 kilometers an hour, because it's all in kilometers out here. And then after 5 seconds, it goes away. This one stayed on.
Oh, wow. Wow.
6.5 hours of ping, ping, ping. Just drove me insane.
Wow.
I'd like to build a model of it so I could then smash it in my hand.
You do you. Welcome, Fenris. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, I found some time, so.
So, can you reveal the car model you've been working on?
Yeah. Turn over here, grab it real fast. as is the case, anytime you show off a model, something will break off. It's the
Nice.
Jeff Gordon instance of the Jurassic Park The Ride car, which apparently was a bit of an infamous car because I guess after racing it once, they told him not to bring it back. But which was an interesting thing I did not know until afterwards. I just got it because it had Jurassic Park on it. I'm simple like that. So, but yeah,
Excellent.
Very nice, Fenris.
In modern times, this is probably my third car I've done. The first one is currently a wreck, but intentional wreck.
Is that one with the Triceratops?
Yep, yeah, the one with the Triceratops, yep. It's also right here.
Oh, it was the Bugatti. I was going to say R8, but yes,
Oh.
Bugatti.
Yeah, so
that's how models should be made.
currently in a diorama with the Triceratops because why not?
I am not taking both cents off John. No, I pay him in love. So 1st of June for Salisbury Show, everybody. So thank you, Paul, for letting us know. Shame you're having the great. Well, take them along. Take them along. They're never too young.
Yeah.
To be dragged around a model show.
Whatever
interest.
My little 5-year-old, she discovered that model shows are a thing and was asking when we're going to go to the model show. And I'm like, sweetie, it's not every weekend. We can't just.
You have taught her well. You're the Padawan.
2 weekends ago, we had an air show, which we took her to her first air show, which that was fun. But she's since got it into her mind that there are things like this happening every weekend. So she's like, it's Saturday. That means we have a show to go to. I was like, no, that is not how that works. I wish it was. That's not how that works.
The world is such an exciting place when you don't know, isn't it?
It really is. It really is.
There are things happening every weekend, sweetie, and they're usually shitty.
Yeah.
We're insulating and protecting you from all of that.
I mean, we find enough stuff to do anyway, right?
Yeah, that's the harsh awakening when you get to sort of 15 to 18, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you're in good company, Jamie. Somebody else had a Peugeot 205. I knew there had to be somebody.
Oh, yeah.
I actually had a 208. Wasn't a special one.
You see, we had a company, I think I might have told this story before, where the company had a policy where everybody had the same cars. So no hierarchy, apart from the managing director, of course. He had a BMW. But everybody else had the same car. So if people left, like the engineers and the salespeople, they could interchange them and stuff. So they had to be estates. And we got a deal where we had Peugeot 406. Yeah. God.
That's the ugliest looking car.
I wouldn't mind if it worked. They would just randomly they had this weird electrical fault and it wasn't just one, it was like all of them at some time might do this. You'd be going along and it would just stop. So all the electrics would just stop and it would just come up on the dashboard. It would just say, stop. One of my friends, one of the other reps, he was overtaking on the A1 doing like 70 miles an hour and it suddenly did this. And he was just like, what the am I going to do now? Yeah. So his life flashed in front of him. It happened to me coming down a hill. It was like, yeah, they were not very reliable. They were replaced with Volkswagen Passats, which back then, like the early 90s, they had like a Star Trek display, like all the kind of blue and red, kind of like the next generation consoles. Really cool. None of them ever went wrong. They were incredibly boring to drive, but they worked. So the Peugeots were exciting to drive, but not in the way you would like.
No.
my first car that I ever got, which again, speaking of modeling, I wouldn't mind getting my hands on a kit of it if I could find one, was an '89 Camaro. And my dad and my brother are both very much they're into cars. I like them in the sense of their cars. I mean, you can't deny that cars are fun and cool just in and of themselves, but I'm not a huge motorhead the way they are. But within having it for about 3 or 4 months, I blew a head gasket off of that because my dad bought it for me before I could drive, so it sat in the driveway. And he never told me that I needed to start it periodically, so all of the gasoline turned to vinyl in the gas line. So when we fixed it, because it was a V6 version, and when he fixed it up, he replaced it with a V8 engine instead. So that was a 16-year-old with a V8, 1989 Camaro.
You see, that's the difference between the US and the UK, isn't it? Here, I mean, you could do that. You would never get insured for that car.
No.
Oh, well, the other thing too was right, like it was bright red, which I don't know if it's a thing over there, but apparently over here, if you have a red car, you will get higher insurance premiums, and like it's one of those things that you get penalized for without realizing you're getting it.
Of course, but they go faster, so
yeah, exactly.
Everyone knows that. They're 40k orcs, right?
Exactly.
I can't remember. Was it the Speed Freaks? I think the orc faction that everything is red because red goes faster.
Yeah, I think it's Speed Freaks. Yeah.
God, how about that? I know some 40k lore.
Well, my 205 was red, and the day before I was due to go down to Gosport to do my Navy selection, I came out in the morning, and it was on bricks. And the gits had nicked the wheel, so I had to go. So I got my courtesy car, and it was a Nissan Micra, and it wasn't even a 1 litre. It was something like a 996 cc. And on the M27, big sweeping hill, it was faster in neutral than it was in top gear.
The engine was holding you back.
Yeah, just a ridiculous thing.
Well, I had particularly bad car experiences. I may have told this story as well. Again, it comes with age. You repeat yourself, and obviously streaming on different streams. I used to have an S-Type Jaguar, 2.7 twin turbo sports pack, phenomenal car when it worked. Most unreliable piece of shit I've ever owned. I regret buying it completely.
I think with the Camaro, I went through about 4 or 5 alternators, which I think had more to do with the fact that my dad would only buy used alternators to replace the broken one. But
disposable item, consumable.
Exactly, right? Like everybody goes through alternators every couple months, right?
Was it like an 80s model?
Yeah. Well, this Jaguar, it was a late production one because I always do my research when I buy cars, and like Jaguar, S-Type Jaguars, like the initial production runs had all sorts of electrical problems and stuff. This was a late production one, and it was 6 months old when I got it. So 20,000 miles on the clock. Wow. Yeah, it was like still under warranty, which is one of the reasons that I got it, because I thought if there is anything, it'll still get sorted by Jaguar. We lived on a farm cottage with a little gravel drive, right, on an incline. And one winter, because we used to get the snow quite bad because we're rural, I had to dig the thing out because I was going to a sales conference in the Northwest. And it was about a 3.5 hour drive. So I usually set off kind of after dinner, say goodnight to the kids, get my bag, get in the car, go to the hotel, stay overnight, fresh in the morning. Yeah. So I go out, shovel all the snow, which I wasn't pleased about, drove the car out onto the main track, but it's still like a dirt track going uphill, incline of about 15 degrees or so. So not too steep, but it was snowy and stuff. Went back to get my bag and everything, put it in the car, released the handbrake, and nothing happened. This little micro switch handbrake. Wouldn't move. So I had to ring Jaguar Assist, and they came out. And I was just like, yeah, we can't do anything. We'll have to take it and give it back in. It's like, we'll get you a courtesy car, but it'll have to be the morning. And it's just like, well, that's not ideal because I'm going to Manchester, They tried to tow it. It pulled the tow truck back 10 feet before it got enough traction to pull it on, which shows you how massively heavy the car was. But it's like, okay, that went off. in the morning, ring to get the courtesy car. Because it was such short notice, I had to go down a couple of times before they actually managed to get me one. It's like, yeah, we've got your car. Come pick it up, and it'll be 10 o'clock. So it's like, I knew I was going to be late already. Picked it up. It was a Chevrolet Matiz, which is like a 900cc tin can. It was just like, I spent the next 3.5 hours, like basically, it felt like in the open air on the M6, like with a hairdryer in my ears. And it was just like the most frazzling experience ever. It's just like, oh my God. It's like you get out of a Jaguar after 3.5 hours, it feels like you've just had a little, sit down in a sofa. That thing, it felt like you've been in a washing machine. It was just horrific, awful, awful thing. It was like the suspension of a Ukrainian tractor. It was, oh. Anywho, we have strayed far from the topic of realism versus art.
Yeah.
But we are at the witching hour of 10 o'clock in the UK. So, and I appreciate, Jamie, it's a lot later for you. But thank you very much for coming this evening. I think it's been a great discussion. Thank you, Fenris, John, Alec, and Sully for joining in along the way. And thank you to everybody in the panel, comments, viewers, spectators, whatever you want to call yourselves, fellow modelers. But for coming along tonight, spending a couple of hours listening to us chew over the fat. And I'm not sure if we came to any conclusion, but it was an interesting discussion nonetheless. So thanks everybody for turning up, listening to us. Please click the like button if you have not done already. Check out everybody's channels here. I will put them in the saved version of this, obviously not the live one. And I will look forward to seeing you on the next one. Cheers, everybody. Bye.